There we go. Yay!
Yay!
So I am not going to let you speak, my fabulous guest, because you deserve a proper introduction, and that's what we're going to do right now. So welcome, welcome, welcome to Instagram family, to Facebook family. Happy Easter and happy Vaisakhi to all of you guys who celebrate. This is the final week of a 3-week special social series I've been hosting here on Instagram and here on Facebook Live, basically about the COVID pandemic. We all know that this has literally changed our lives and the lifestyles of all of us around the world for the foreseeable future. As a recap, in week 1, I did a 5-day special called Big Personalities in Small Places. Here we dealt with how to effectively communicate during social distancing, where I brought on a number of incredible experts and personalities and celebrities who basically gave us their tips and tricks and some resources around how to navigate through this from a number of different perspectives. In week 2, which was last week, I did a 3-day special, basically because I got DM'd a lot by a lot of you guys asking for me to kind of tackle some of the serious global issues that we're all facing. That particular 3-day special was called COVID-19 Fact versus Fiction, where I had experts come on to deliver the need to know information across the medical industry, the financial world, as well as the various multi-platform communications realities out there. So really to kind of dispel a lot of what we were getting inundated with, and we're still getting inundated with, in terms of the sensationalism that we're all facing across the internet and across media today. If you missed either of those 2 weeks, just go on to Facebook family. You already know this. My Facebook business page is Raj Gurn, and I have all of the sessions and the conversations and insights that I had with the 2 weeks worth of social series that I did. So please do check that out. This week, I will be doing my final week. I've decided that this is going to be my final week, 3 weeks, the Holy Trinity in threes, just because I feel that I need some time to kind of shut off myself and to just kind of recalibrate on just a lot of things that I'm personally dealing with, all good things. So, you know, not to get, worried about anything. It's something that I generally tend to do every now and again throughout the year when I feel that I'm being kind of, inundated with a lot of messages that are coming to me across, the external and internal environments that we live in as humans. So this particular special series that I'm doing this week is called Spirituality and Lifestyle. I've chosen experts who can shed light on different aspects of spirituality and how to incorporate them into our current reality so that we can navigate the lifestyle changes that we are facing today. I'm a huge advocate for those of you who are joining me for the first time, but those of you who are very familiar with know this about me. I'm a huge advocate for incorporating multiple doctrines to create a life that is uniquely in service and purpose-driven, no matter what we're facing. So this particular series is a 3-part special airing today, Wednesday, and Friday, here on Instagram, as well as Facebook at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and whatever that time is in your respective time zones. Today's guest is an expert who I greatly admire for her deep knowledge in astrology, and her name is Nadiya Shah. And before she says a single word, she deserves a proper introduction, don't you think, guys? Nadiya is a much revered astrologer. Vanity Fair has named her amongst the top 11 astrologers in the world today. She is the founder of Synchronicity University, where she teaches astrology to a global audience. Nadiya is also the author of a collection of books, which we will be talking about throughout, this session together, because I strongly feel that if you're looking for a deeper understanding and meaning to astrology, these would be an awesome read right now, because not only are they reader friendly, and don't assume that you have any knowledge in astrology. And right now, while we are continuing to administer social distancing, I couldn't think of a better time for you to kind of tap into perhaps a doctrine, a science that you may not have looked into. For those of you who are avid followers of astrology, avid fans of Nadiya, you'll know how valuable the insights and knowledge is regarding the sky. So welcome, my dear Nadiya Shah, my kindred sister. I love you so much, and I'm so brimming with excitement that we have you here today.
Well, you are just a bucket of love. You are. So of course you'd be brimming with loves, but thank you. Thank you for all the love that you've sent my way and been part of the love in my life. Thank you so much, Raj.
Absolutely, my dear. So I am just going to go straight into the first question because I know that we have so much to cover, and Instagram just decides to shut people off after an hour. And you know, Nadiya, you and I, we can go on for like a whole day. So without further ado, I just want to kind of preface my question by just saying that I personally believe that all spirits inhabit a physical form with a divine understanding that we are here to fulfill our soul's purpose. The most challenging part of that process for most of us is to kind of figure out what that purpose is. With that in mind, Nadiya, did you discover your life's purpose to be in the service of astrology through specific things that you've, kind of experienced, or was it something that you knew right from the beginning?
I think that astrology is something that chooses you for sure, because in order to be an astrologer or to honor the calling of astrology, you really, have to be willing to be out there. That really is the truth. That's a part of it, is that you really have to be willing to trust yourself. You have to be willing to know yourself, because no matter how educated one is, and you know my educational background and all of that, still there is this sense that to be an astrologer, you're not necessarily among the masses. You're
Right.
willing to be a little bit among the fringes. And I think that takes a lot of self-knowledge to be willing to do that. But I just know that ever since I can remember as a little girl, I felt a strong connection to the sky, like a spiritual connection to the sky. And when I got older and I went through a time that was very difficult, it was astrology that gave me hope. It was astrology that was a source of strength and inspiration to me. And it was during that time that I really found that depth of commitment and love to the practice. And I think I've been so blessed that I can actually have that be my career path as well. So I think that's how it kind of came together. It really was one of those things that chose me. I had very different ideas. I thought I was supposed to be Madonna. Like, that's what I thought. And then I thought, because when I was growing up, that was the woman with power in the world, right? She was the one who had a voice in the world. And I remember the moment when I realized that the world already has a Madonna, doesn't need another Madonna, but maybe it could use a Nadiya Shah.
Amen to that. Amen to that, girlfriend.
I know, right? But then realizing that I had no idea what that was or who that was. And that was at the beginning, a painful journey, but ultimately a rewarding journey. And I'm always willing to be open and to change, but I know that for today and for right now, it does feel like this is who Nadiya Shah is, and I get to live it, all the time. It's pretty cool.
It's really cool for us. That's all I have to say from a selfish perspective. It's really cool for those of us who tune in to your YouTube channel every single week, just to hear everything and your interpretation of the sky, which is incredible. And I want to kind of, get into that in a bit. I want to first ask you, as a scholar, as an academic, someone that has studied astrology for many, many years, both from a traditional standpoint as well as, many other forms, what have you fundamentally learned about humanity's relationship with the stars? If you were to try and kind of encapsulate that.
I think that when we look at the oldest documents in human history, when we look at cave drawings, some of the oldest indications that we are human beings as we know ourselves to be today, we see a documentation of celestial phenomenon of the sky. And we see people making sense of it in relation to us. I mean, it is so foundational. It is something that you can see in us when we are young, before, you know, all the messages of the world get in the way. It is as if something in our soul knows that we are connected to everyone and everything. And it is the planets that display that in a way that is so poetic, and that we feel in our heart and in our soul. And so, as much as astrology continues to evolve, as much as astrology is a living practice and it responds to the culture that it finds itself in so that it can serve the people who are using it, at the same time, there is something so fundamental about it, so instinctually resonant about it. And I think that's very powerful.
Absolutely. And we're going to continue on with this conversation to kind of discover some of that as we go along. Nadiya, this week, it's all about how to live and how to incorporate the mantras and teachings of various forms of spirituality, as I said off the top. Although astrology is a science, it is deeply rooted in spiritual practice. My belief is that everything we experience is essentially a spiritual occurrence by default of the fact that we are spirits looking to experience ourselves within the confines of the human form that we're in, with the goal being either, and you know, this is something that has always been debated over centuries, either to create bondage or to create emancipation. What are your thoughts around that ideology?
The ideology of spirituality as a type of bondage. Well, look, I'm reminded of Freud, and lately Freudian ideas have been coming to mind quite a bit lately, and I've been talking about them in relation to the sky in my videos lately as well. And he believed that religion was one of those things that we needed to sort of contain our otherwise most hedonistic selves, right? That if the human being was allowed to just be free, then what they would choose would be, you know, perhaps not very good for society, not very good for the self. I see things differently, you know, and I think that's part of why astrology has been something that has people afraid, especially in more, in certain established ways of looking at religion, in certain institutions. It's because it asks us to trust ourselves. And when we are interpreting the sky, it is essentially an act of poetry. It's really looking at a celestial phenomenon and making sense of it. It involves a huge amount of self-trust. And that means relinquishing power. That means turning over power for the people who have power and returning it to the individual, to the person. And so I think that spirituality in and of itself actually can bring forward our better nature. But when we look at spiritual traditions, the thing is, and when we look at sacred texts, what happens is you meet yourself. That's it. All of these sacred texts, they have a variety of messages in them. And they're very powerful. They're in a powerful language, and there are people who hold these texts very near and dear as sacred. But ultimately, if you are a loving person, you are going to find love there. If you are a person with a lot of wounding, with a lot of hurt, and you are looking for validation to continue that cycle, you're going to find reasons for that there as well. But ultimately, astrology, while it can be something that helps us to understand, it has been one of those things that can also help us to contain these very strong forces. But, you know, I think that sure, there are parts of human beings that are maybe not as enlightened, maybe not as good, that have been reined in a way that is good, but there's so much about what it means to be human that is so good. Human beings can be so loving. And, you know, I really see that when you look at the sky. I always say you can't have astrology without the astrologer. What that means is when you look at the sky, just like when you read a sacred text, what happens is you meet yourself. That's it. So if you are a person who feels that fate is cruel, you know, as Freud called it, the cruelty of fate, then that's what you're going to see when you look at the sky, when you look and you read these sacred texts. But if you are a person who believes in the fundamental wisdom and love of the universe, then that's what you're going to see as well.
So let's go there, Nadiya. There are various teachings that we incorporate to understand our soul's purpose. You've touched upon that already. One is astrology, and that's the one that we're going to focus on today, of course. Can you explain to the uninitiated what astrology actually is, since there's a veil that has been cast over it as a woo-woo science, as you know, although it is a science that has been in existence since pretty much the beginning of recorded time. And people always tend to think that an astrologer is a psychic. I know you get this all the time, but I just feel that we need to kind of address the difference by defining what astrology actually is.
So astrology is to observe celestial phenomenon and to connect it to our human experience here on Earth. It really is that simple, is to draw those correlations between what's happening in the sky and what's happening here on Earth. There is a long established tradition, as I spoke of the earliest human documents, right? The earliest understandings that we have, the earliest proof that we have of what it means to be human includes a documentation of the celestial sky and how that correlates to phenomenon here on Earth. I think it is the most natural, the most instinctive, the most intuitive thing. That's why it is so old.
Right.
That's why we see it going all the way back. And that's why, you know, along the way with the different institutional forces trying to stop different forms of, whether you want to call it divination or spirituality, astrology is really the only one that is still a part of mass culture today. Is the only one that has stayed the course, that has stayed with us as part of our mass consciousness. And I think there's a reason for that. I think it's because it resonates. And so, yeah, it's that resonance. What's happening in the sky, what's happening here on Earth, that connection, that is what astrology is.
And it's interesting that you say that. And off the top, a lot of people also think that either you believe in astrology or you believe in religion. And the reason I want to bring that up is that, you know, people who kind of create this, you know, line in the sand between the two of them clearly have not really, you know, studied their religion, have not studied religion. I mean, one of many examples is, you know, the star that guided, you know, all of the different kings or prophets or astrologers. There's different kind of, you know, ideologies behind who they were, who came to look for Jesus Christ when he was born.
Yes.
It was a star. It was an astrological phenomenon that guided them. That is very a part of, you know, religious texts in Christianity. And that's just one of many, many examples. So I just kind of wanted to bring that up as well. You know, what's your take on that, Nadiya?
Well, I think that so many religious traditions, they have tapped into celestial phenomenon to in some way validate their origins, or in terms of their practices as well, their different spiritual practices. There are many religious faiths that rely on the lunar calendar, for example. They rely on the lunar phenomenon to indicate when certain holidays are taking place, because it was that particular lunar event that indicated the origins of that particular holiday. And what you're talking about, the Star of Bethlehem, that's the three wise men, right, who looked at the Star of Bethlehem, they interpreted it, and they understood what it meant, and they followed that up with action. And because of that, we have this sort of wonderful way of looking at and saying, this is valid, right? This origin story is valid because of its correlation to celestial phenomenon. And you know, it's interesting, I've lived in Mexico for over 7 years now. And in Mexico, the Day of Astrologers is also called the Day of the Three Kings. Like culturally, the day that is celebrated just after Christmas, right around January 6th or 7th, off the top of my head, it's right around there. That is the Day of the Three Kings, which is actually the day when gifts are given out, not so much on Christmas, but it's that day that the gifts go out. And that is seen throughout the Latin world as the Day of Astrologers, because it honors us. And it's interesting that the wider culture may not realize that it is these very people who are at the heart of validating this important religious tradition. So it's always interesting to me when people think that there's a disconnect, but it's one of those things where, again, wherever you are, that's what you're going to see. Right?
Absolutely. It's what you're exposed to, right? And how you understand that exposure.
Well, I would also say how much you trust yourself, right? How much it is that you are willing to love or be open, or how much it is you're willing to expand your interpretation and your understanding. These are the things that indicate ultimately your receptivity to understanding and to seeing those layers of understanding within a sacred text and the origin stories, as we like to say.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And every single religion has them, every single religion.
Oh, yes. Yes.
So there are different forms of astrology, of course. Can you explain, what we need to know about that? Because that also kind of seems to be an area of confusion for a lot of people.
There are different types of astrology. Yes, there are a whole lot of different schools of astrology, and they all have their own philosophical assertion, right? Their own philosophical foundation to them. And I'm thinking about, for example, there's the school of psychological astrology, and that is going to approach astrology very differently. And it's a very modern take on understanding the sky. Astrology evolves just like people evolve, and our human understanding of ourselves has changed. So too will astrology change and evolve as well.
Right.
And so, yes, it's been called the blueprint of the psyche when we look at the astrological chart from a psychological perspective. But then there are other traditions. I'm thinking of the Vedic tradition, for example. Yeah. Now, the Vedic tradition is rooted in the Vedas. It's rooted in South Asia, where the Vedas arise from. And so that will be a very different worldview that they will bring to the interpretation of the sky. But even Vedic astrology is a living practice as well. And so I'll give you an example. In India right now, they have had one of the fastest growing middle class than just about anywhere in the world.
Yes.
And what does it mean to be middle class? Well, it means to believe that you can take effort on your own behalf and you can improve your circumstances. It means that you are willing to step out of a construct that is strictly about fatalism, that is strictly everything is written, everything is the way it is. But really, up until very recently in human history for all of the world, we didn't have much control over our life. We were not able to exercise our free will the way that we are today. And so the astrology has to respond to that. The astrology has to reflect that. And so you see, even within the Vedic astrology community, it has become a lot more reflective. The interpretations have become a lot more about empowering people to know themselves, but also to use their free will with greater awareness and greater wisdom.
Right. What a profound statement right there. It's almost like we need a moment of silence just to kind of take that in. Yeah. There are so many directions I could take this conversation in, Nadiya, but I'm going to stay on track. And the track for me at this point would be to just ask you a question for those people who haven't really, tapped into astrology, the knowledge of astrology, how to kind of, know where to go in terms of how to create value using that knowledge. So with all the different types of astrological doctrines that are out there, how do we know which one to listen to or to assist in guiding us when we're making a specific decision within our life? I mean, that's a huge question, I know.
Yeah. Well, trust yourself, trust your intuition, let it take you where it is that you need to be and where it is that you need to go. It really is that simple. Because you will be attracted to, whether it's the astrologers, the interpretations, the techniques that ultimately are going to reflect where you are in your life and what it is that you are needing from your astrology. And so I think that really is the big thing, is just trust, self-trust, goes a very long way. And I think that's part of what attracts people to astrology, actually, is that it gives you that opportunity to really tap into your own instincts, to tap into your own wisdom. And so just trust that and see where it is that it wants to take you. You will find the resonance.
Yes, absolutely. Like myself, you're also, such a student of, wanting to know many different ways that you can look into different ideologies out there and see how you can kind of, better your life's purpose and your experiences in life. And, with that said, prayer, meditation are also a big part of your personal practice. I mean, you've even written a book on prayer and its connection to the sky. Let's talk about that a little bit.
Sure. I first want to say, because I normally keep my books right here on the table, they're just a little bit off over there, because the person that I used to work with to do the covers of my books, he passed away recently. And even though when I look at my book covers, there's a part of me that feels very grateful. Up until very recently, I felt a lot of pain when I looked at those, because I missed him so much and I loved him so much. And so that's why I kind of like took them off my work area for a minute, just so I could focus a little bit more. But yes, I did write a few books so far. I got another book coming out. So the book I'm talking about, is called The Body and the Cosmos. And so what I do in this book is I basically, because I'm such a nerd, as you know.
Yes.
I'm such a nerd.
Love you because of that.
I know, thank you. But I loved one book that I read by Plato called Timaeus. And Timaeus is a mystical understanding of the cosmos. And the thing that we don't always realize with these people, with Plato and Socrates and Aristotle, is that these were deeply spiritually guided men. They were deeply spiritual, and their understanding of the universe was deeply rooted in spirit as well. And so what I did, because I am an astrologer, is I took the ideas of Plato as he outlines them in Timaeus, and I apply them to an astrological sky. So it's me sort of making astrological correlations to what Plato is saying about the different parts of the body. And then I follow that up with meditations for each sign that correlate to different spiritual attributes, different physical attributes. And to me, that makes astrology something that you are working with. It is a relationship with the sky here that I talk about in The Body and the Cosmos. And I think that really is it. Like I want to facilitate a relationship with the sky, not so much just say, this is what it is and this is the interpretation and that's it, but to say, how do you experience the sky? How can you realize that you are all of the signs, because you are all of the cosmos, you are the universe. And to awaken that understanding within us is part of what I see as the higher mission of my work. And I do think with The Body and the Cosmos, it was truly with the intention of helping people to connect on that level of energy, on that level of meditation, to understanding how all of the signs are within you.
Yes, absolutely. And I have all of your books, and they are a tremendous read. They're a tremendous read because, you just have this unique way, Nadiya, of distilling all of that knowledge down into very simple, format, very simple reading and understanding. I want to take a moment to just plug your books. Where can people buy them? What are they called? Let's go there right now.
Sure. So my book, The Body and the Cosmos, I just spoke of. My latest book is Prayers to the Sky.
Yeah.
And that is, each planet has its own section, and it has some of the tradition of astrological magic in it. And it has an exploration of the origin myths to the different planets so that we can understand them. And so that you can connect with their energy, so that you can know their energy, so that you can feel them. And then it has prayers in it as well. Prayers that some come from ancient Greece. So the Orphic hymns, the Homeric hymns, and then some have been written by me. And so that really is to facilitate a relationship to the astrological planets. So what I did for the signs in the body and the cosmos, I'm doing for the planets in Prayers to the Sky. And then my next book coming out later this year is called The Universe is Wise and Loving. And it's more technique driven. So it's more for students of astrology, where I'm actually talking about a specific astrological point called the nodes of the moon and how that speaks to our karmic path. And then my original book, Astrology Realized, that's really good if you want to get a historical and philosophical understanding of how astrology grew to where it is today, to how we understand it today. And it also has some of the techniques that you need, the language that you need to get started as a beginner in reading astrology charts.
So folks, you heard it right here. There's a number of great books that you guys can just go grab online, available on Amazon and
everywhere books are
right?
sold, Amazon and all of that.
Perfect.
Prayers to the Sky just came out a month ago, and it's still it's still among the top new releases in New Age astrology books on Amazon. So it's quite amazing to me. Thank you.
Yay.
Like a month in, this book is still top 5. It was like #1 for like the first 2 or 3 weeks, and then it's remained in the top 5 for a month, which is quite incredible to me.
It's because it's really needed right now, Nadiya. It's like you're so guided to kind of intuitively somehow know what we need and when we need it. And let's talk a little bit about that. You have been on your YouTube channel talking a lot about what's happening in the world right now with the COVID pandemic. Mm-hmm. You've been looking at, all the different activity that's been in the sky. The spread of the virus and the resultant lockdown of the entire world is something that, at least in our lifetime, we have never experienced before. And there is no doubt that, this is really going to change us as a species moving forward. Your YouTube channel, you've been talking about it literally since the beginning of 2020, being a majorly active year as it pertains to the sky and its understanding of COVID and, what we're experiencing as a collective here on Earth. Can you talk to us and maybe talk us through some sort of a chronological order from January and up to wherever you feel comfortable, and touch upon what's been going on with this active sky that you've been talking about a lot. You talk about it, as it relates to moon cycles, as it relates to planets conjuncting, and also with the various retrogrades that have or are going on or will be going on. Tell us what we need to know right now.
I've been talking about this for years, actually. And
yes,
and I know in 2018, I was talking about it. In the 2019, I always do these videos looking at the year ahead, and then I do the week ahead regular webcasts. But in the 2019 year ahead, I was diving into this in the 2020. And what we as astrologers have known is that 2020 was set to be a huge year. And this really is a shift in consciousness. It is a shift in our understanding of what it means to be human. And if you think about it, the last time that we had this type of celestial phenomenon take place, like we've had similar stuff, right? And so just stepping outside of the idea of pandemics and things, we've had pandemics before, right? They do happen from time to time in different parts of the world.
Yes.
But this specific type of celestial phenomenon we've had taking place for 2020, we have not seen in 500 years. Wow. And so the last time that we saw this type of celestial phenomenon, it was in the West, what we call, it was the start of the Protestant Reformation. And so if I could give a little bit of historical background, what happened Absolutely. At that time. So in Europe, up until about 500 years ago, the real dominant force, the dominant political force was the Catholic Church. And so whether you want to think of it as a spiritual force, a religious force, an institutional force, a political force, certainly, it was the Catholic Church. And for them, they had this idea, which was very dominant in human consciousness at that time, was this idea of intermediaries. And so I'm not talking about anyone's religious faith today or anything like that. I'm speaking of this more in terms of what we have experienced as humanity in terms of political shifts, in terms of shifts of consciousness. I'm talking about it on that level. Absolutely want to be very respectful to everybody's religious beliefs and
Yes.
recognize the beauty in everybody's religious beliefs and how they express their devotion. But if you think about it, this is a time in Europe when they have kings and queens, right? These are the dominant forces in society. We have the Catholic priests who are the dominant forces of society. And these are all people who are anointed by God. These are all people who hold the power. You have to go through them if you want to reach a higher power. And then here comes this rebel movement that we've come to understand as the Protestant movement that said, no, you can read this sacred text in your own language. And you as a human being, you get to decide what that means. You deserve to have your own relationship to a higher power. And this was revolutionary. I mean, this caused people to be killed, to be martyred, who dared to think that they could be equal to these intermediaries to the gods. And it was Martin Luther in particular, who was the leader of the Protestant Reformation. He said that God is not found in your churches. God is found in your love for each other.
Yes.
That was a revolutionary thing to state. But it was this very Protestant Reformation that kicked off in a profound way with their really iconic moments happening under the same sky that we had earlier this year. And so it wasn't that this one thing happened and then all of a sudden the world changed, but it was building for a while. So we've been building towards this for a while on a level of our consciousness, but it was this iconic moment that represented this shift in consciousness, because think about all the things that arose from that place. We had a shift in global power. We had a shift in our understanding of who is anointed. So for example, the French Revolution could not have happened without the Protestant Revolution.
Right.
The United States as a secular force could not have happened without first having the Protestant Reformation. And you also think about it in terms of the approaches to colonization, the very different ways in which the Protestant Church and the Catholic Church approached colonization shapes the world in very powerful ways as well. And so think about on a more personal level, beyond just the political level, you think about it personally. Once you get rid of the intermediaries, your whole understanding of what it means to be you, what it means to be a human being, what it means to trust yourself has gone through a huge metamorphosis. It is a leap in human consciousness that is rooted in that moment. And so we've had this moment that took place back in January. We had what astrologically we call the conjunction of Saturn and Pluto in the sign of Capricorn. Now, these two planets meet every 40 years, but it is much more rare for them to meet in this particular sign of structures, right? Of the structures that hold society together. And this is a rebirth that we are now going through. Now, consider this. At the end of this year, in December, we are going to have a rare phenomenon. That is the meeting of Jupiter and Saturn at the very beginning of the sign of Aquarius. The sign of Aquarius is of the next, right? It's an energy of revolution. It's an energy of self-trust, of the new age. It's an energy of individuals having the kind of equality that we've never known before. And this configuration hasn't happened in many, many centuries, but it's going to happen twice in this century. It's going to happen at the end of this year, and it's going to happen again in 2080. This is huge. To me, all that's been happening is ultimately a preparation for that next shift of understanding, that next new beginning. Now, this meeting, what's interesting, this meeting in the sign of Aquarius, this meeting of Saturn and Jupiter, it happens every 20 years. And when it happens, it's the beginning of a whole new way. It is manifesting the dream. It changes our reality. So you were speaking earlier about the Star of Bethlehem. It was this conjunction that happened in the sign of Pisces at that time that indicated this idea that as we think of him, this divinity, right? This divine manifestation coming together, that happened. That Star of Bethlehem was the meeting of these two planets, but in a different sign. And so this is going to be not so much divinity manifesting, but humanity manifesting in a way that we just have not known in a very, very, very long time. And so I see this as a profound time. And this moment of COVID-19, I'm calling it the Great Pause. And I actually came across that phrasing in an article, not an astrology article, but an article on Medium. But what I'm calling the Great Pause, astrologically.
You did a video on this just recently, right?
Yes, I did, exactly, this week. Because it is as if all of us are being asked to be still, to just stop, right? We're saying pause, stop, whatever you've been doing, because I think so many of us have been on automatic. So many of us, we've been going through the routines of our life. And it is now that we have to be still, to be with ourselves. And for some people, that is very challenging. It is very difficult, because then you have to look at all your disappointment, all your anger, all your fear. But the thing is that on the other side of that is all your hopes, all your dreams, all the possibility. And I think we are glimpsing that right now as well. And I just think that, you know, once we get to the other side of this, and I don't think the other side is actually until we have that conjunction in one form or another throughout 2020, you look at all this very powerful astrology that is taking place this year. In particular, I'm thinking about Jupiter meeting Pluto. That's happening this month. It just happened a little bit before earlier this month. It's happening in June with precision. It's happening in November. I think that in some way or another, we are all going to be asked to stop, to pause in ways that are uncomfortable at times. But I think that the real shift, that sense that things are really starting to go in a whole new way, that is going to begin at the end of the year with the winter solstice and the meeting of these two planets. And I am just envisioning a whole lot of people, once we start having to get back into the groove, right? We're returning to society. I just envision so many people going back to where they were before. And some people are going to feel really grateful. They're going to be like, thank God I'm here. You know, I didn't realize how much this meant to me until now. But I think there are going to be even more people who are going to have to go back, and it's just not going to feel right. It's just not going to feel right. And especially right now.
Because of the habitual patterns that
Yeah, thank you for asking, because of the way in which we have been automatic.
Yes.
And now we've been out of that. After being out of that and having to go back, the disconnect is going to show. You know, and it becomes undeniable where it is that there's been a disconnect, but we've been denying it. It is going to become undeniable. But it is right now. Saturn recently moved into the sign of Aquarius, is going to be there March 2023 up until then. And so I do think this idea of social isolation, this idea of working from home or working from a distance, it's going to be with us for a while. I mean, for a while, not only because of Saturn until 2023, but then Pluto for the coming 20 years. So we really are on the precipice of a whole new way of interacting with each other that's going to be with us for decades to come.
Wow. So right now, with us being kind of, you know, in the thick of things in terms of, you know, being on pause, and then, you know, post being on pause once the COVID situation has been dealt with, what do you feel people should be focusing on, you know, from your own personal, you know, understanding of how we need to kind of navigate the space right now?
I think that we are being asked to stop, to pause, certainly, right? That is, we have limited options externally, but we've got so many options internally. And what I would say is the greatest thing we can do is acceptance. That doesn't mean that you don't take action. That doesn't mean you don't try to do what you can to make sure that you're going to be okay financially, because I want to honor the fact that there are a lot of people out there who can't do like you and I, right?
Right.
You and I both, we have the agency to work location independent.
Right.
And I honor the fact that there's a lot of fear right now in a lot of people as well. But as much as you can, surrender that as much as you can, because the fear isn't helpful. And as much as you can, just surrender, turn it over to whatever it is your understanding of a higher power or a higher will may be, and just find some acceptance where you can. Find some acceptance where you can. Because I think that it is remarkable how we are being asked to understand what really matters in the middle of this. That really is it. What is essential? What really matters? You know, I'm thinking about how my mom, a few months ago, late last year, you know, she was saying to me in December, she said, you know, I never had a Louis Vuitton bag. I want a Louis Vuitton bag. And I said, Mom, don't you worry. I'll make sure you get a Louis Vuitton. And she did in January, right? And now it's like, okay, yes, these things are very nice. They're part of the human experience. It's fluff, right? It's play. It's superficial. You see it for what it is. But
that's okay.
Yeah, and that's totally okay. Enjoy it. Rock your Louis, rock your Chanel, do what you got to do, what makes you happy. But when you think of a moment like this, right? I mean, I don't even care about that. I want to make sure my parents are okay.
Yes.
You know, I'm thinking about things that are showing me what really matters, what is essential. I want to make sure my dog is okay. I want to make sure the people I love are okay. This is the reveal. This is what is revealed during the great pause, is that you get to see what really matters to you and what's superficial, the things that we've stressed about or thought about or obsessed about. It's an opportunity to see what really matters and maybe what doesn't. And it's not that you shouldn't enjoy what doesn't matter. Enjoy it, absolutely. Right. But it's just about perspective. And, you know, I would say that one of the overriding lessons right now for most of us is to realize that what really matters, we have. What really matters can't be taken away from us. And it's incredible as well. I'm seeing so many people make choices with the big picture in mind. And I think that is also part of the gift right now. A lot of people who have the means, who are able to, they're doing things like buying property, for example, right? You wouldn't think that, but people who have that ability to actually have agency during this time, they're thinking, okay, what about the big picture? What can I do to ensure that I'm going to be okay, that I have what I need in the big picture? That's a gift. Mm-hmm. That is a gift. And I think that what we really need very often is within us. That really is it. And I think we're discovering that now. We're seeing what's within us, the pain, the love, the fear, the compassion, the understanding. Earlier you asked, I get really passionate about this, Raj. You know, you asked me, and this is where I get really passionate. You know that about me. But, you know, you pointed out earlier, you were asking earlier about this idea of the celestial phenomenons that guide us, the origin of humanity, of astrology. I think that is so primal within us. It is primal to know that there is a higher wisdom and a higher meaning played out. And we were talking earlier about the nature of being a human being. You know, is it that we unleashed would just destroy, or is it that maybe we would love? Now we're seeing it. We are seeing it, and we're seeing it within ourselves. I think that's powerful. That's honest. And that empowers us to decide what kind of world and what kind of life that we are going to move towards. It's a very special time. Yeah. It's so exciting to be alive right now. It's so exciting to be an astrologer right now, to be in the midst of these very rare things and to see the world changing in front of us. As much as I honor that it's a scary time for people, it's also really exciting, you know?
And it's interesting because it's usually when something is scary that, you know, good things come from it, you know. Yeah. You and I have talked about this numerous times, you know, on a personal level, that it's the things that have challenged us personally that have helped us grow in our respective journeys. And this is a collective, worldwide version of that really that's happening, right?
Absolutely. I remember when you interviewed me, it was you're such a great interview. I got to say, it really was so great. And I loved being in your home.
Oh my
Your
gosh.
fabulous gold couch. I loved it so much. But I remember thinking about my own dark night of the soul.
Yes.
And what that, how I still can remember with empathy and compassion, the girl I used to be, that journey I had to go through to become who I am today. And to get to the place of just being like, Nadiya Shah is okay. Finding a place of acceptance for myself. It needed that quote unquote dark night of the soul.
Right.
And so how amazing that now it's being forced on us. So many of us now, it's like, nope, be still, be with yourself, feel it all. And it is collectively on a universal level, on a cultural, world culture level, that we are having to go through this journey. It's very profound. And it's once in a lifetime. We're not going to see anything like this again. We'll see lots of, breakthroughs and reasons for hope. We'll see lots of different ways that the world will change. But this great pause is once in a lifetime.
Right.
Yeah.
The last time that the entire world was brought to its knees was during 9/11, from my recollection in my lifetime. And, post, and we talk about pre and post 9/11. Equally, we're going to be talking about pre and post COVID.
Yes.
During the 9/11 era, the big thing that came out from the post perspective was security, was this idea behind feeling secure, and really all of the different mechanisms that were kind of, instilled in our society to make sure that we were safe. What do you feel will be kind of the things or the thing post-COVID that we will see as a mass humanity that will be changed forever?
I think it's more about each other, to understand that, we are, the strongest is as strong as the weakest.
Right.
The healthiest is as healthy as the sick, the most sick. This is really showing us how integrated we are as a world now, right? It really is a small world, and energetically, or on the level of germs, or however you want to understand it, there's such an intimacy that is constantly taking place between us and everyone on the planet. We are connected to everyone. And with astrology, with everything too, right?
Absolutely.
Everything, everyone, there's this very deep and intimate connection. They talk about how if someone's been somewhere and they've touched something, that those germs are going to stay there for a day or 2 or 3 or whatever. That's something lingering, something that we've left behind, like where you've been, you have left something of you. There's still that energy there. You exist in all those spaces.
Right.
And I think that awareness now is powerful. And I think some people are afraid of that, right? And they're like scrubbing everything and whatever. And I understand that. But at the same time, the awareness of that is really powerful, because think about this. If your germs are everywhere you've been, maybe so is your love.
Right.
Right?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That one.
So is your love. So is your hope. Right? So is the sadness that you felt, but you learned from. I mean, it is a very powerful thing to realize that you really are everywhere that you've ever been. It is a very powerful thing. And that means that the people who've loved us can still be there. The people who give us hope are still there.
Absolutely. And it's just the divine message of every single doctrine of religion that we've ever had, is that the greatest of the greatest of the great is love.
Yes.
Really?
Absolutely. My mom, she said to me when I was growing up, she used to say that, I remember asking her, how do you know what religion is right? Right? Because growing up, being born and raised in Toronto, South Asian community, and especially at the time, such a small community, with such a religious diversity that you got to know, you were very close to people from all the major faiths of South Asia, Muslims, Sikh, Hindus, Christians. You were very close to them. You saw them every weekend at Gerrard Street, that's for
Right.
sure.
Right.
And, right, you saw them. And so I remember asking my mom, like, how do you know what religion is right? And she said, we can't know that. All we know is that every religion teaches us to be a good person. So if you're a good person, if you're a loving person, you're a part of every religion.
Absolutely.
That is really how I have lived. That is how I teach. That's why, like in my videos, for example, you'll get teachings of Jesus, you'll get teachings of the Buddha, and I relate it to astrology and more, right? Because, and modern teachers as well, because I really do think that, yes, maybe it is us. We were saying earlier about you find yourself. But when I see these texts, when I see the sky, I see a lot of love.
Yes.
I see
Absolutely.
a lot of hope. Yeah.
And you know what, Nadia? I'm just being told that we barely have a minute left to go. So I absolutely want to take a moment to sincerely thank you for your wisdom, your insights, the incredible experiences that you've had, which we are getting the opportunity of all of the learned wisdom from. I would like to give people the opportunity who have come across you for the first time to actually just, know how to get a hold of you. How do they find you?
My website, nadiyashah.com. If people are watching me on Instagram Live, the Instagram Live is here, which is why we keep going like this. And, click on my name, follow me there. You can find me online. Like literally, if you put my name, any spelling of my name. Now, Nadiya Shah, very common name, very common South Asian name. But if you put any spelling of it, it's amazing. I show up.
Oh my gosh.
Any spelling. I'm like, oh, wow, this is good. And Google says, YouTuber, puts my pictures there.
Absolutely.
So put any spelling of my name into Google and you will find me. Easy breezy.
Thank you so much, my darling sister. I love you so much. And my only, downside of all of this is that I don't get to see you in person soon. But I hope, God willing, that we get the opportunity to see each other again and share magical moments like we always do. But until then, I will continue to see you on YouTube every single week.
In perfect time.
Thank you so much, my love.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.